So I went to start my 12-speed 780 here, and it was out of fuel, like bone dry. Thought that's weird. I parked it with like a half tank or so, which is like 4 gallons or something. I think these only hold 8, but couldn't figure out why. There was a big nasty puddle on the ground, burned in the grass around it, all the grass shavings and stuff that had blown on it when it was sitting there during the summer had collected fuel. Several years ago, this filter base had the filters wiped off it by a set of manure forks when somebody turned around with a loader with manure forks on it and slid in the mud or something, and only wiped out one fuel filter. I think we ended up doing both of them just because we were there. That's why they don't have paint on them like everything else does. What I didn't notice was that fuel line looking like that. It's supposed to look like this. Well, not that rusty, but this was the one that was in the parts bin. It actually had a mud wasp nest in it. So I cleaned it out, blew some brake clean through it, ran a piece of copper wire through it because it would bend through the line. Scrubbed it out with that, blew more brake clean through it, and I actually had it soak in some diesel fuel cleaning solution I made for cleaning carbs and that. So we're going to change this line out real quick, and I'll bet you it doesn't leak fuel anymore. But I'd be willing to bet, being the stain area on the side, and that was a suspect area to begin with, I bet that's where our problem was. Takes a 9/16 wrench, both ends, and then we'll put some fuel in it and bleed the system out. So, got the fuel line changed out, and I ran the lift pump, the hand primer pump. You can hear fuel returning into the tank. I put a little bit of fuel in that. I don't have much fuel here, but I put maybe a half gallon in there, and it was able to pick that up. Cracked this line. I guess I took it off, got a blast of fuel out of there while I was running that, so it's getting fuel into the pump. Now we are going to hook the battery up and bleed it at the injectors because I don't know if there's air in between here and the other side of the power head. So I'm going to crack all 3 of those, crank it over, and see if I get nice of fuel, and if we do, I'll tighten them up and it'll probably start. One thing I should check, and I think I did check this already. Yes, so the oil, it's just barely over full, and still feels like good oil. It does not feel like there's fuel in it, because there's 2 things that can happen while a tractor's sitting. It can have fuel run from here, bypass one of the seals in the pump, down into the engine here, or there is a little push rod on the back of this that drives off the camshaft. If a seal goes bad on the back of this pump, or inside this pump, it'll fill the parts of the pump that aren't supposed to have fuel in them. Like the little back casting here where it mounts to the block, and that will end up in the engine. We had our 1494s done that before. It had, I believe the lift pump went bad, and we changed the lift pump. Then like the front seal and the injector pump went bad. So we fixed that, and then it quit leaking fuel into the engine, and it just started leaking other places with other fluids. But that's what some of these tractors do. You fix one leak and they spring another one, or you find the next weakest link. But I'll give these tractors credit. They're old. They're tired. They're long beyond what they were designed to do. This one, I believe, is the 67, so it is long past what it was expected to do as far as how long it was expected to live. Let's hook the battery up. Is it going to pass a smoke test? I put that on the charger. It sat with very little juice in it. So we'll see if she'll... Yes, it will. Okay, we will turn the fuel on. Crack these guys loose. I'll spare you the pain of that. So this procedure is going to apply to most of this style of diesel engine, mechanical injected. Everything's going to look different, but for the 3-cylinder David Browns, you've got your fuel comes from here. There's actually a thing on this line that goes down near the bottom of the tank to pick up the fuel. It goes to the lift pump, the sediment bowl, the lift pump. So you're going to want to make sure it actually cycles, and it will take a while if you ran it out of fuel to get fuel back into there. You want to make sure that actually has some resistance to it. If not, you might have to bump the engine over because it could be sitting where that cam is already pushing that pin, and it will not cycle that if it's already being pushed. So that's doing what it's supposed to do. It goes here, filter 1, filter 2, goes up to this line into the pump. If the engine's not running, it will bypass out this line on the bottom, and where does that line go? Thought I just saw it. Oh, it goes under here to the leak off lines. Same thing. There's a line that goes from the filter, tees off with that line, goes back to the leak off lines, back into the tank. When you get the motor spinning, then it will put fuel to the injectors through the pressure lines here, which I have cracked loose. When those are loose, once you have fuel through to there, going back into the tank here, and you have your filters full, which if you change your filters, that will take a while to fill them up. Next thing will be cranking the engine and waiting till you get nice fuel pressure spraying out of there. Nice consistent fuel pressure. All right, let's see if we get fuel out of the injectors. So we definitely got fuel to the injectors because we had a nice kind of spray out of there, and you heard the motor slowed down because that battery is not in very good health because it did sit with no charge on it, or very low charge for a winter. So it's not healthy, but it will start this when it's warm out. I will probably put a new battery in this before winter because I would like to plow snow with this one. Pardon the squeaking in the background. That sounds like a smoke detector. I'm pretty sure it's a cold stunned cricket that's slowly warming back up in here, because there were some crickets that found their way in here in summer and never found their way back out. Even though the door is wide open, they don't want to leave for some reason. Okay, if you have more than a 3-cylinder engine, you can just crack like, half of them at a time, or maybe 4 out of 6 on a 6-cylinder or something. And then once you get fuel out of a couple of them, you can switch to the other ones. That way, when you do get fuel through them, a couple of them might start and save your battery a little bit and make it a little easier. If it runs on 2 or 3 cylinders, well, you finish bleeding the rest of them, that's okay. So there's those. See if it'll start. Ooh, better put the throttle back to not all of it. Hope it thought about it. Okay, apparently that's sticky. There we have it. I gotta lubricate that cable, it's sticking. Okay, so there's that problem solved. Now I've got 99 other problems, but a fuel leak is not one of them. There's the last of the fuel working its way back into the tank. You can see it's coming from there. Yep, there's that. Thanks for watching, guys. That was a quick little video. hopefully that helps you figure out how to bleed the fuel system on your 3-cylinder David Brown. Although this does apply, the general idea applies to other tractors. You just have to figure out where your fuel comes in at, how you're priming it, where you got to open to get your air out. You could open here to make sure you have it through your filters. I knew I still had fuel in the filters because I didn't run it out. You know, there was still fuel here and forward. It was just fuel from here to there. But I thought I should double check the injectors. Once you get through there, you got to make sure you have fuel to your pump, which in this case, the supply line goes in here. On the 4-cylinder ones, I don't remember. I believe it also goes in the center. And there is, you know, instead of having the one down here, there's 2 here. Or on the 6-cylinder CAV Lucas rotaries, there'd be 6, or I think there's 8-cylinder ones as well. You know, there's 8 of your high pressure injector lines coming out, and your fuel's got to go into the pump somewhere. And then you got to figure out where your high pressure lines are, which are usually the big ones at the base of the injector, and usually your leak off ones are at the top. You don't have to worry about the air getting out those, as long as you don't have a bubble stuck inside your injector tip. There's a little spring in there, and it would continue to compress the air very, very high pressure until it opens that, whereas the fuel does not take near as much fuel to do that. So you have to make sure the air does not cause a bubble to get stuck in there. That's why you bleed the air out here, which we did have a little bit of air in there. So, fuel in, fuel prime. Got to make sure you have fuel through your filters. Got to make sure you have fuel into your pump. Got to make sure you have fuel coming out of your pump to your high pressure lines, and no air between your high pressure lines and your injectors. You also need to make sure that your fuel is turned on. On these tractors, it is this simple: pull is run, push in is stop, which runs this little guy here. I don't know where that's supposed to be hooked, but that's where it's hooked. It rotates this little guy here, and then your throttle is here. So you'll want to make sure you're not at like idle, which would be like clear down there on this one. You want to make sure you have some throttle when you prime that. Sometimes pumps will get stuck where they are either stuck on the fuel is off or the throttle's too low for them to get fuel through them. That'll be another video for another time. I have a crawler loader that I need to change out a fuel pump on because the rack is stuck on it. That'll be another video. It's not getting fuel to the high pressure lines, but it's getting fuel into the pump. So, thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully that'll help you guys bleed your fuel system on your 3-cylinder David Brown or any other tractor that's a diesel for that matter. And stay tuned for more videos and let me know what you want to see more of, and I'll try to help you guys out. Thanks for watching. And remember, if your hands are clean, you're not farming with junk.